Hi, this is Phil, and I'm here to tell you all about the Capes and Lunatics Patreon. Get early access to all of our interviews, including the monthly Chichester chats with writer and comic book legend DG Chichester, new episodes of classic Capes and Lunatics shows, including The Quantum Zone, This, That, or the Third, and many, many more specials, all completely uncensored. Access starts for $3 a month, full video when you pledge $5 a month. Check out the link in our show notes or go to patreon.com/CapesandLunatics. Hope to see you there.
I'm Kelly Thompson, and you're listening to Capes and Lunatics.
Welcome back to another episode of the Capes and Lunatics. It's me, Phil. Lilith had to duck out at the last minute, but we have your other guys from the Energon Universe podcast. We got Justin the Owl, we got Russell, and of course we're here to talk to, once again returning to the Capes and Lunatics, always generous with her time, Miss Kelly Thompson, to talk Scarlett #1, which we're all excited for. So,
ooh, the Joelle Jones cover. I really love that.
Yes.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Oh, thank you for taking time out of your Battles on Marvel Snap to join us, Kelly.
Yeah. You guys missed off air. Phil at the last second was like, "Hey, keep that energy up." I'm like, "Dude, I've been trapped inside my house all day, banging my head against a script that is not working out. So there's plenty of energy. I've had no one to talk to all day. The gates will be unleashed. Here we go." Okay.
So what you're saying?
Green goblins and hobgoblins flying everywhere.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is, in a few months, the Birds of Prey will be battling something that has to do with disruptor decks. Is that what you're saying?
Oh yeah.
I would never write disruptor decks into anything good because they're bad, and I obviously only write good things. So you answered your own question there.
All right. All right. So yes, Birds of Prey, what was that? 10 came out this week, but also Scarlett #1. I mean, this is. So from what I've read and I guess interviews and stuff you've given, so you were a big fan of Scarlett way before this even?
I was. Back in the day, I'm old enough that G.I. Joe is in my youth, and it's pretty powerfully there. She was one of my first real geek loves, and a great gateway drug to a lot of other sort of boy-coded stuff that I really discovered when I was a kid. I mean, I was pretty well-rounded, I think, as a kid. Like, I liked a lot of girl things too, but I definitely liked more boy stuff than like other girls I knew. Which is not to say, I'm not saying sports, but I'm saying stuff that they were marketing directly, like comics and action cartoons and things like that. But I think Scarlett was like a godsend for G.I. Joe because she was a great POV character for me. I connected to her. I wanted to be her. I sort of had a crush on her. She had the cool crossbow. She eventually had the cool vibes with Snake Eyes, the coolest character in the whole thing. Like, she was a great character. Like, I was saying to these guys the other day that the only mistake G.I. Joe really made was that they would switch the women out and they never got to be on the same team. So it's like, once they started raising up Lady J, I hated Lady J, not because she was a bad character, but because she was replacing Scarlett, who I was super attached to. If they just let Lady J also come in, which, there are some episodes, but it's usually like, it has to be like, the men are being mind controlled by a conch stone, so all the ladies have to team up, and it's always something crazy like that to get them to work together. So
yeah, it's the only time you ever see Cover Girl too.
Well, yeah, and Cover Girl definitely probably doesn't get enough shine. I really hated Cover Girl because I'm like, wait, at least Lady J's got the spear and the whole thing, but Lady J is a great character. Like, I would not say she's better than Scarlett in any way, shape, or form. That's blasphemy. But I do think she's pretty well written in those. Like, she definitely, her personality, like, I feel like they did a really good job of making her different than Scarlett. They feel like very different women, which is hard because a lot of those characters in animation, when you have a huge cast like that, you have to paint with a pretty broad brush. But they did a good job. They just should have let him. I mean, honestly, I was watching some episodes the other day for just to get in the vibe and the have fun with it and everything the other day. And I was watching the intro, which, my God, that song. I watched a couple episodes. It's been in my head for 3 days. Anyway, they went so far as to I don't know if it's the second season. I know the season stuff. I don't know how big a nerd you guys are with this, but it's all very confusing because it's like, it was 5 miniseries. It was a movie in 5 parts or whatever. So like, it gets very confusing. But at some point, they like changed the art in the intro so that in that final shot that has the logo and all of them standing there, they replace Lady J with Scarlett. And let me tell you what, my young brain lost its mind. Like, is she not going to be in the show now? What are we doing? Are we saying they're replaceable? I mean, like early feminist vibes for Kelly before she knew what it was. I was like so mad. And it's a disservice to both characters because they're great and they should be able to be in lots of adventures together.
Definitely. I can't even remember ever seeing them together other than that episode, the conch shell.
The conch shell one is definitely. I think there's another one that I remember where I don't think it's Baroness because Baroness is the one who's got the conch shell thing, but like there's another one where I think it's a different character and. It's something with like stealing youth and beauty from other women. And so I think there are more female Joes in that one too. But the funniest thing about the conch shell one is not that suddenly you get to see all these Lady Joes together and, oh, hey, here's a lady scientist we've never seen before that has a speaking role. Like, oh, yeah. But the really fun thing is that all of a sudden there's lots of shapely female Cobra agents that you've never seen before. And all of a sudden, like, they've been tapped. It's pretty funny. It's pretty funny. Anyway. It's great. It's great. It's great.
Yeah. So was that part of the reason? I mean, I'm sure you had ideas for the story and that, but were you that was one of your things like, okay, I want to have more, another female character besides Scarlett in this book. So that's part of the reason Jinx came in, or
honestly, that's a great question, Phil, because I don't think I really thought about it like that until just now. But that is, I was just thinking of it more like I always am looking for, and all writers have themes they like, fathers and sons, sisterhood, whatever. We all go back to those wells. I feel like I find those narratives of sisterhood very powerful. I think I'm good at them. I think they solve some problems, especially in more male-driven spaces where it gives us a chance to really get to know all those characters in a deeper way and not just like, hey, who are these characters this white girl likes, right? So I really wanted to build up like this powerful thing with them. But I think you're right that probably the earliest origins and feelings, not just of wanting to do that with Jinx and Scarlett in this series, but the reasons I reach for sisterhood all the time go back to seeing that kind of thing happen over and over again, where these characters don't even get to talk to each other. So why is that happening? So yeah, I think there's a lot of that there. I mean, I knew that we were never going to be able to do, Snake Eyes as like her co-lead. You don't put Snake Eyes in a Scarlet book. He's Snake Eyes. He gets his own book, right? So I knew that if we were able to use him, it was going to be in smaller capacity. And so right from the jump, I was looking for what are some good options to build like some bonds here, to build some real history, to give us some emotional ties. And honestly, Jinx was the answer right away. And she was also, we knew we wanted to bring in Arashikaji for a lot of reasons, but she makes a ton of sense in that space as well. So, I'm really proud of it. I'm really glad that Hasbro and Skybound were into it. It's a pretty big swing. I mean, they certainly know each other historically, their characters that interact and their allies and everything, but we're definitely going much deeper on who these women are and how much they mean to each other and sort of what they've been through together. But I am already, just to clear it up, because I've already seen people questioning it, she says they're like sisters, like on the page. So it's not intended to be a romantic thing. I certainly like that kind of thing. I don't think it would make sense here. I think Scarlett is half of one of the most famous romantic pairings in all of geekdom. I think breaking that up would be foolish and short-sighted. And I mean, how are they going to let me write Scarlett and Snake Eyes someday if I break them up? So, yeah, I mean, I'm not interested in this. This is an incredibly deep relationship. My first pitch for it, I literally wanted them to be sisters. That I wanted Scarlett to have been adopted into Jinx's family. That was sort of the pitch, but I think it was just a bit too much change for them, and I don't think that's wrong. I think when you're doing these things, you're looking for that sort of happy medium, that best balance between how can we change it and make it more modern, make it feel real and relatable, without, destroying a lot of stuff people really love, which is a tricky balance. But I thought a lot about when we were talking about the pitch, and I was frustrated that initially that they didn't want to go all the way. It really reminded me of my Rogue and Gambit pitch, where I sort of had a wild swing and they had to pull me back, and where they pulled me back to was right. It was the right balance between them,
I mean, is that one of the big, I don't want to say fears, but one of the big things where you're just yeah, it's a new universe, so I wanted to try to do, I'm sure they want to do something different. They don't want it to be, same old, but it's how far can I go and not, make this character I love completely unrecognizable?
Yeah, I mean, and I think I would say that that's one of the ways in which, at least in my case, they cast very well, because I'm a genuine fan of the character. I do not want to change so much about her that you don't understand who you're reading. I want you to read her and be like, oh my God, Scarlett, I forgot I loved her. That's what I want. And I did get that from someone, actually, a fan who follows the Substack and reads a lot of stuff I write. I think she also had some G.I. Joe in her history, but she wasn't running around being Scarlett's my favorite character. And she read the book the other day and she said something like that. And it really made me happy, because that's exactly what you're going for. It's oh, I forgot what a keystone Scarlett was for me, as a young geek or something, So I think changing it more than that, and specifically making her in a romantic relationship with the Jinx, all the attention would have been on that. And that's not what it's about. That's not what we're doing here. We're establishing this woman, what she cares about, what she'll risk anything for, who she is, who she's going to be, and where she's headed. I don't want all this. I mean, that's why I answered the guy on Twitter. I'm she calls her her sister on the page. It's not, what do you think, we're doing an incest story? No, it's not. It's not where we're going, guys.
Oh, hey, we got a question from Noel, who's in the chat room. Hey, Noel, he says, do you think Hasbro has been more hands-on than they were in the Marvel days?
Well, I can't really answer that because I wasn't around in the Marvel days, so I don't know what that looked like. I think I would say that for me, it's been very seamless. I feel like when the IP, when the licensor stuff goes right, you almost don't feel their hands. You just feel like you're working with your editor. I have mostly felt that. I think on the pitch we had a few Hasbro feels, that kind of stuff, but it's been pretty seamless. But I have to say, I'm maybe just really lucky because Hasbro, they're also Gem, which was the first that's the first thing I did in comics. And I had a really great experience with them on that too. I think they were very open. They were very positive to us, making it, more diverse, more gay, more all the things that it already was in the 80s. They were super into it. So I've had really good luck with them. Cool. It doesn't always go that way.
So, obviously people are probably going to draw comparisons between Scarlett and Black Widow. So I wanted to know, what about Black Widow influenced this, if at all? And what were you trying to, differentiate from Natasha in this?
I think that one of the really good things that happened is that, because I think the pitch and maybe even the first draft of issue 1 was much more Black Widowy than this is. But I think Marco coming on really changed the energy of the series a little bit in a good way. Not just in a good way because I like the book, but in a good way because I think it really pushed it away from being like a copycat of Black Widow. I mean, I certainly didn't set up to make a copycat of Black Widow, but I knew there were a lot of overlap in the Venn diagram. And so I was just aware of it as a thing. But when Marco came in, like, so I feel like the original pitch and the first draft of issue 1 had more of a like restrained James Bond Mission Impossible vibes. But I felt like Marco's art had a real sort of like controlled chaos to it. Had more energy and a little more frenetic feeling that made the pitch feel, or made the work feel a little more like John Wickian in a good way. Which fit with, we're not on a revenge mission, but we are on like a very personal stakes kind of a story where you're willing to go all the way to the end to get this person back or find out what happened, even if that's like a nightmare, you know? So I think that actually, without realizing it, I mean, I don't think he realized he was doing it either, but it just sort of pushed us in an interesting direction that I think throughout the story ends up pushing us in a little different direction than Black Widow, which I think is great because I wouldn't want the books to be too similar. They're very different characters despite the overlap of the red hair.
Yeah. I also wanted to know, like, how are you in correspondence with like Daniel Warren Johnson and Joshua Williams? Are you all like, you know, collaborating, or is it very much you do your thing and we'll provide the notes?
No, it's pretty coordinated. I mean, I think they rely on a lot of that coordination just because all the editors and the IP Hasbro are coordinating. So they're making sure to really pay attention to everything that's coming in and like making sure it doesn't contradict it. But we did do a small writer's room. I think it was either in the fall or maybe the tail end of summer. That was when we were all just pitching, and Joshua was much further ahead. So he was sort of telling us what was coming and what he had set up. And like, it was very much like, here are the things that are going to be off limits, either because we're saving them or because other people have called dibs on them. I had to throw a few elbows to get the Arashikaji and Jinx. And then, of course, when I got the Arashikaji, that meant I had Storm Shadow. And so everyone was jealous of me, which was great. So it's my preferred way to operate. But we just, it was sort of a heartbreaker, on some of the questions. Like, I really wanted Roadblock for no reasons other than nostalgia. Yeah. But, like, they have plans for these things, and they're being very smart about it, in my opinion. Like, everything I've seen so far, like, setting up a universe by doing it in cool character-focused miniseries that all have their own directives, but that simultaneously, in a not overwhelming way, build the universe is very clever, I think. It's a very good way to do this. And if you're going to make the books as good as they're making the books, it's a really good way to do it. So I'm excited about it. We probably are a little bit less connected than a book like Cobra or Destro, because those are your fucking lead bad guys. I mean, I know Scarlett is one of the leads, but she's not even a Joe yet. So like, I feel like the Joes are a little behind where Cobra is. So naturally, when you're reading Cobra or Cobra Commander and Destro and stuff like that, I feel like you're getting bigger swings as far as lay of the land. Whereas I think we're probably a little more like Duke. And like, we're bringing a huge part in this Arashikaji of it all. But, and there's this weapon that we've teased in issue 1 that is a big deal. But I think it's all pretty well coordinated. I mean, fortunately, they're not making me go to a million meetings, but I feel in very good hands. Like,
and since they're both intertwined, I'm sure you cannot confirm or deny if any of this is going to show up in Scarlet. But have they made you aware of Transformers plans?
I mean, I read Void Rivals and I've read some Transformers, and they're definitely coordinating that because the Energon of it all is like a big deal. So expect to see that tying into our book. But I do think the good news is it ties in a way that if you don't know what Energon is, or you're not familiar, or you don't want to know, it's also not going to matter. Like, it'll all still make sense within our narrative. But I think for people who are more interested or equally as interested in the larger picture, I think that'll be like a oh shit moment of, what's going on there. So that's good.
Hmm.
And just to go back to the whole, are people watching this carefully? They made us take. I think Marco hadn't drawn it yet. Fortunately, it was just in the script. But Sean, I think, made me take out Snowjob being in a Hawaiian shirt in the tiki bar thing that I did, that one shot or two shots or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, Chuckles wears those shirts. And I was like, come on. I was like, nobody else can wear a Hawaiian shirt. They're like, we don't want confusion. I was like, all right, whatever. And so, like, some nerds really care, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Thinking about Chuckles. Yeah.
No, I mean, we've been reading all these books, and you could tell all the planning and, just the thought that go into all of these. And again, it's like, like you said, I mean, you can read like one of the series and you don't have to read anything else. But if you are reading everything, you see a much bigger picture. Yeah, you can see the care going into it. Yeah. Yeah,
I mean, reading Void Rivals, I think I had already read the first Void Rivals before I got the call. They were pretty close together as far as I remember, but... I would have been interested regardless because of Scarlett, but it was because I had read Void Rivals just organically and been like really blown away by it. I was like, oh, they're serious. Like they're coming to me and asking me, I want to do this book. Like they're going to make a great book because I can already see they're swinging like huge swing. Mm-hmm. Speaking of, every time we talk about Void Rivals, I just have to mention, if anyone hasn't read De Felici, the artist's Chroma book, they should do that immediately. It's one of my favorite books of last year.
Yeah, I'm going to check that out because I am in love with the art. It's so
tremendous. Well, if you're in love with the art there, it's Chroma is beautiful. He wrote it and drew it. It's fantastic.
Oh, fantastic. Okay.
Yeah, check it out. You won't regret it. It's very subtly smart and really emotional. I love it. It really was one of my favorite books last year.
Nice. Cool.
Is there any interest from your side to, jump to Transformers? Is there a Transformers character you would like to write? And maybe if they started doing minis for them as well?
I know a lot of G.I. Joe fans are excited that I seem to be checking out as a fairly genuine fan, if not a hardcore super nerd. For Joe's, I am sorry to disappoint everyone that I do not have that for Transformers. I'm sorry. I know it's disappointing. Sorry to let all of you down. I don't know what happened. I want to say I'm just not that into big robots, but that's sort of not true because if you put a robot with a personality in a thing, I mean, I would have killed every person in the entire Andor universe to save that robot in the final episode if he was going to die. I only cared about that robot surviving. So I obviously can get there, but it tends to be a more emotional vulnerability humanizing thing, which I'm sure that exists in Transformers, but I haven't seen much of it. Usually when I encounter it, it's more like, we're transforming, we're violent, now we're fighting, we're vehicles. And I'm like, not that into cars. Like, so it's just not there. And then a lot of the stuff with me, even though I'm ahead of my brothers are both younger than I am, a lot of my engagement when we were kids of finding boy things had to do with things they were interested in. And so they never super were into Transformers, which probably curtailed me a little bit. And then when they were into transforming things, they were watching Mask. I don't know if that's because they're younger, but I didn't care for Mask either. So I just didn't do any of that. I was more like, let's watch more He-Man and G.I. Joe. I'm into those. And, Thundercats. Can we watch that? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Like that was sort of my stuff. I think it's the robots and the cars. And I think that all when you're a kid, especially, and you're venturing over into like boy coded things more anyway, those felt very intimidating. And I think I just sort of never found a way to connect with them. I wouldn't be opposed to writing some Transformers, but it seems like a mistake because there are so many, there's so many great writers out there who are like, it's the same reason I've always turned down Star Trek when it comes to me. I'm just not the greatest person for that. I respect the hell out of Star Trek. I think it's super cool. Part of me would love to be a super fan, but I don't have the time to just go back and pick up all the nerd hobbits, right? And so I know there are better writers out there who just love it with their whole hearts and bodies. So like, why would I take that job? And that's how it feels with Transformers a little bit.
Gotcha.
Not that anybody has asked me, although I was asked to do something with Transformers a while back when they were with IDW, but not since Skybound, no.
Okay.
Come on, Justin.
I was asked to do a Joe. I tried to pitch a Joe thing when I was doing Gem at IDW as well. And none of it really made it into this because this was much more of a specific thing. But I will say a lot of the research and like ideas I had done from 10 years ago when I was thinking about it, like were helpful to thinking about it now. They sort of gave me a head start.
Come on, Justin. You say you had a bunch of questions.
Yes, I was going to ask. Well, I wanted to share, like, first of all, my moment that made me a Scarlett fan, and I wanted to ask Kelly if there was a particular moment that she can recall that made her a fan. For me, it was in the animated series. It was right in the beginning when they were doing one of those 5-part miniseries, and I think it was the one with the mass device. It was the episode where Scarlett sneaks up on Destro, or she tries to, but she fails her stealth roll, and he is able to get the drop on her. But she grinds the heel of her boot right into his foot, and as he's grabbing his foot and dancing around, she grabs her crossbow and smacks him in the face with it. That moment, I was like, that is fucking amazing.
I don't remember that, but I think I want that one to be it. I mean, that feels like it should have been burned into my brain. I mean, the heel into the foot, especially.
The heel into the foot, and then smacking him in the face with the crossbow. But he actually overpowers her and takes her captive in this ship. But then, this is the real moment. So they're flying along, and he's being all Destro and all creepy with her. Oh, I can't wait to see you become a slave on your groveling before me, Scarlett. And so she says, that's not my style, Destro. And the crossbow is like on the floor. He's left that within reach of her. So she grabs it with her boots, and she's able to, she's got her hands bound, but she's still able to grab it and aim it at the control panel. And she shoots an arrow at the control panel and blasts it, and they start hurtling into the side of this mountain. I thought, oh my God, this woman is willing to take them both out. I love her.
That's amazing.
Rather than be a slave, of Destro, she's going to take them both out.
I will blow up in a mountain. No, that's amazing. You know what that reminds me of? Is funny. That reminds me of the time when I knew I was fully in love with Gambit, which is in Executioner's no, not Executioner's Song, Extinction Agenda, when they're all tied up and he picks the lock with his feet. Yeah. He takes the stake out of his leg with his own teeth.
Yeah, he's been stabbed with.
Yeah, and then he drops the stake into his feet. Yeah. And then lifts his feet up all the way, like Incredible Crunch Time, and picks the lock with his feet. It's completely impossible. I try to remember it any time I'm like writing something and I'm like, wait, could people even do this? And then I'm like, I just try to picture Gambit picking a lock with his feet with a wooden stake that would have been so too dull to be a pick. Amazing. But that sounds very Scarlett vibes. So I'm gonna have to go rewatch that episode.
Come on, Kelly, you know that moment. That would be Gambit telling you in that French accent. He's very flexible, you know. I thought you had more, Justin.
If Image came and asked you to do another miniseries, and you could pick the character, any character, which one would you pick?
Did she say already? I think she already said Roadblock.
Well, I don't know that I've got a whole Roadblock miniseries in me, but I mean, Snake Eyes is the obvious answer. I don't know what their plans are for Snake Eyes, but I'm sure they're big. I mean, is he anyone? I mean, I know there's a few people who he's not their favorite character, but it's pretty universally like one of the best characters. So I'm sure they're planning something special for him. I do think I would love to write a Snake Eyes Scarlett book, like down the line, if they're going to do that, if they get the characters together and that's a thing. I mean, I really love writing couples like Rogue and Gambit in those, like very capable people doing a lot of violence together because they love each other. I'm into it. So that would be fun. I do think having gotten to use Jinx here, she would be fun. I don't know that they'll be interested in that because she's been pretty well featured here and they've got a lot of characters to cover. I think another character, I mean, I wouldn't want to pigeonhole myself in this way, but Lady J would be up there. I think she's a great character. I think, you know.
What about swinging? Yeah. What about swinging it the other way? I mean, you write so many heroic women. Would you be interested in like a Baroness, like doing like the opposite side of it?
Yeah, what about Baroness?
Fucking love Baroness.
Yeah,
so great. I was watching this episode with Baroness and Zartan the other day, and she's just yelling at him and insulting him, calling him like a mercenary, and he's fine to just clock off. Like she's really committed to the cause, but he's just like a day player. It was like so specific. It was so like a fight some people had in their life or something that now Zartan and Baroness. I also watched that hilarious episode recently, the Games Master one, where Baroness is conveniently kidnapped. It has one of my favorite tropes in it, which is, well, it has several of my favorite tropes in it. Big, weird games to destroy you. Of course, that's always fun. weird fun houses elaborate, and amusement parks, elaborate. So, I mean, yes, more, please. But when they kidnap Baroness, the other trope it has is enemies working together. So it's Cobra Commander, Baroness, Flint, and Lady J are the four that get kidnapped. And Baroness gets conveniently kidnapped in her bikini. She was in the hot tub. So she's in a bikini for the entire episode. And let me tell you what, I guarantee you they tried to make Lady J be in that too, and she got nixed because she is abducted while she's in a dressing room changing. And I guarantee you they tried it to be just her underwear, and they were like, no, you got to put a skirt and the shirt on, but she can keep the heels or whatever. So Flint and Cobra Commander look completely normal the entire episode, and Lady J is in her streetwear, and Baroness is in a bikini. It's absolutely so obvious what they were doing, but it was hilarious. I enjoyed every minute of it. It was a delight. your mostly harmless sexism of the 80s. It was
boy, why weren't more girls watching this?
Yeah.
I did want to bring up though that we kind of run into a problem here because right now Baroness is on the good guy side in this universe. For now.
So far.
Yeah.
So I was actually going to ask a question, because, we have these rivalries in G.I. Joe, Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow, Duke and Cobra Commander, and Scarlett and Baroness are always kind of paired with each other. Is there any kind of, are they headed on a collision course together? But with her being on the good guy's side, it seems like it's a little challenging.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the specific plans for that, but I would assume they're planning to get her over on the bad guy's side. She's too good a bad guy to leave her. But I love the complexity of her playing both sides. I also think you get a potentially great, Baroness could be, depending on how you want to position her, she could be like a very good kind of white queen anti-hero type of character where she goes back and forth because she's got her own moral code and she sort of decides whichever side her bread is buttered on or whatever is what she's doing today. I do see how that could work with a character, although she's such a good villain. It's hard to think. I hate the idea of seeing that stuff get shaved off, but I do think what Josh is doing so far is really complex and cool and sets up really interesting stories going forward for what I assume will be her eventual defection or kidnapping or something where she switches sides. It'll be fun, whatever it is. I do think that, I wouldn't be totally opposed to Scarlett since she's the first female character really on the board in a big way. And she and Baroness having a thing. But I do really sort of loathe the whole pairing the girls up with the girls. I know it seems counter to what I was saying before about sisterhood. I do like to see women coming together and whatever, but pitting them against each other, it just feels like such schoolyard stuff. Girls can only fight girls, so make those two fight. And you tell me this Destro cartoon I've got to rewatch with Scarlett. It sounds like it should be Scarlett and Destro.
That's what I was thinking, because there's a Destro book about to come out too. So pair these two off.
But it does, it does sort of remind you. I was thinking this the other day, and we were sort of I was already sort of talking about it in this cast, but that the Joes are definitely at a disadvantage, which is where you need them to be the underdogs, right? But like, you know, Duke obviously is a leader of G.I. Joe. Maybe Scarlett will end up being that as well. I feel like she's maybe a little young to launch right into that for how we've written her. But, you know, Baroness, Destro, and Cobra, I mean, they're like in charge. So they're calling the shots in a way that, I don't know, the Joes sometimes don't feel like they ever are. Do you know what I mean? Like, I know it's a military industrial complex whole thing. Like, they're run by the U.S. government. So, but when you're watching a cartoon or reading a comic, it's like Cobra Commander's in the headquarters telling all his minions to do something. But Duke is always out in the field, fighting the fight, doing the mission, doing the thing. And so because of that, it does feel a little unbalanced when Duke goes up against Cobra directly or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, because they seem like a level above. And I think that's good in a way because the stakes always feel really intense and high, and we always feel like underdogs, which is a good sort of writing trick. But I do think it ends up setting you up for sort of a weird thing about like who's the nemesis, right? You know, it's not as clean as something like, I can't believe I'm going to say this, but like Dr. Venture and Dr. You know, the Monarch. Like that's like very clear. They're pitted against each other in a very direct way. And G.I. Joe, by the nature of the military aspect, sort of doesn't have that, like, exactly. But I do think that's a fun thing to play with in the books. Like, you know, the more you can look at things that you're afraid are a weakness or a you know, Achilles heel, sometimes that's the thing you should be leaning into. So maybe that means we need a new character who's sort of good or bad, is like sort of overrunning this or whatever. Like, there's all sorts of things you could do. So, and the good news is Josh is like the biggest G.I. Joe fan I've ever seen. So I'm sure that he has a lot of ideas about how he'd like to go with these things.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, I love this book because, like you said, it's like the military on one side, it's this terrorist organization on the other side, and then both sides are just like, well, we're going to throw ninjas in the mix. That's always my, the thing that interests me the most about G.I. Joe is like all the ninjas and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you said you wanted the Arashikaji right from the get-go. Did they give you any pushback about that? Were they like, no, we don't want to do that yet? Or
no, they were super into it. I think they felt it was its right time to get them on the board. You know, they're sort of a rising global power, and like, how do they fit into this? You know, they're sort of much like Storm Shadow. They're a little bit more gray area where they're not Cobra, but they're not Joe. And does that mean you should be the bad guys just because you're not on our side? Like, you know, it's more gray. So it's interesting. And I think that's, I don't think the Arashikaji will be pretty well explored via our book. Although it's not called Arashikaji. It's not called Storm Shadow. It's called Scarlett. So expect the focus to be where it is. But I do think you get a good picture at some of that stuff, at what's at stake for the Arashikaji, of what Storm Shadow is up to, and the sort of the complex layers of that character, and where he'll maybe go next, and where he'll help take the Arashikaji, I think is an interesting question. So I think all of that plays with here, but I don't think you're not going to don't expect in this book really maybe the big declaration of what they will be. I think that's one of the ways in which we're all talking about this strength of like these individual miniseries are allowed to do their own story, and then they're also building out little pieces of this. So I don't think you'll get the definitive, all the pieces to this, but you'll get a lot of them here.
Nice. Very cool.
But Kelly, have you ever read any of the original G.I. Joe comic series by Larry Hama, who's still writing it to this day?
Crazy, right? It's crazy. I've read some of them, but I'm not nearly as well read. I mean, my favorite one is the one we all love, G.I. Joe 21, The Silent Interlude. It's an amazing comic. One of the greatest things about it is that like Snake Eyes is going through all that and doing all that to rescue Scarlett, and then she's does it herself, sort of like she just sort of gets out on her own, which I love. It's great. It doesn't punk anyone, but it's interesting, and it like gives her agency. It's really great. It's a great issue. So that's one of my favorites. I think some of the Springfield stuff I also read in that arc, but I haven't read a lot of them. You know, sometimes war or military comics are similar to the robot thing. Like, it's a bit intense for me. It also tends to be very male coded. I'm sure you guys are aware. you tend to get in those stories a token female, not a lot of, and I don't have to have female characters. It may sound like I won't read anything that doesn't have women in it. I will. I just, I'm interested in chick stuff, man. I'm a chick.
Mm-hmm.
It's lucky there's as much crossover as there is.
Well, I think like back in the Marvel days, like I think Larry was kind of constrained too. I believe I've heard, anytime they entered, that's when the toys were really pumping out action figures. They're like, well, this one is premiered. You have to have this one in this, by this issue and stuff. So
the new vehicles,
Man, that would be hard. I mean, maybe it would be really fun, but it sounds really hard.
Yeah.
You should track down the issue where Spirit gets beat up in a shopping mall by a lady with a purse.
Oh yeah,
that's
yes. That's so funny.
So, I mean, as a writer, can you imagine writing like this, like the same property for 40 years? Like, I mean, there's little breaks in between, but like for 40 years,
300 issues,
over 300 issues.
Mean, I don't even.
I mean, especially something that's not even your own. It's not creator owned or anything.
I don't know how you do that. I honestly don't. I barely could do Captain Marvel for 3 years. I mean, but I want to. I guess. Let me say this: it's hard to imagine doing that because of the way comics is now. If you could write knowing that you had the runway, I think it would be a completely different experience because you wouldn't because it's a really exhausting cycle that breaks a lot of creators because you're pitching every 5 issues for a new arc. So you're constantly pitching, you're constantly restaffing, and you're constantly like reinventing stuff. Sometimes you don't have to reinvent everything, but it's very hard to bring plots, B and C plots forward and to build them up into A plots that pay off later, which is how a long running series really needs to work. I've never been allowed, even on Captain Marvel, we didn't have the runway to do that. We were still pitching arc to arc. There was a point, I think in the late 30s, where Sarah was like, you're going to make it to 50. She's like, so if you want to plan a little more out, I can't see them canceling this between, we were like at 38 or something. She's like, there's no way they're going to cancel it in the 40s. She's like, and, we're doing pretty well, so we could still get some boosts that like make it better. She's like, so just try to plan for 50. But honestly, I was traumatized. It was still hard to plan, even for those 10 or 12 issues. I was just so trained. I've been so trained to think to the trade, plan for the trade. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's just really a different mindset. But if you knew someone was going to give you the runway to do it, you weren't worried about being replaced, and you could really lay out a plan, that would make it a lot more viable to do. Then you could like take it maybe a year at a time, or you know what I mean? Like, here's my year plan. And then we're building towards in 2 years, we're going to do this, or whatever. Mm-hmm. But when you're just like, hey, we know a whole new villain of the week and we got to run that for 5 issues. And then this has got to happen. And it's got to be end of the world level stuff at every issue. I mean, it's just exhausting. It's like,
or if there's a company-wide crossover. Then
yes, exactly. Yeah. Oh, in the middle of that thing where she's in a magical prison in space. Yeah, we'll be doing an event book. And she's the star of it. And you're like, wait, what? What do you mean? She's in a magical prison in space. No, she's in this too. You're like, what?
At the same time.
So, I mean, that's stuff you just have to get over. And like, the more I encountered that stuff, the more when fans come to me and they're like, I don't understand. I'm like, listen, you can't.
Yeah. Okay.
The bottom line is there's a choice here. You can either get the better stories and get them from the creators who are really passionate about telling them, or you can have it all line up. Mm-hmm. Pick one. Right. You can't have both. It's impossible now. I just don't believe it can be done. It's so hard. Ugh.
Okay, and I don't want to let this go before we're done. I mean, Birds of Prey 10 came out this week. Again, excellent. Is there any word? We're still trucking along? We're still going? No.
Oh, as far as like being canceled?
Yeah.
No, we're good. We're
yes.
good.
Yes.
Good.
Yeah, we're good. The last thing I was told was we're greenlit indefinitely.
Yes.
Don't get too excited. I think, people
modern
have
and definite.
Things have changed since then. 6 months has happened since then. Yeah. It could be anything now. But I am working on, in addition to wrapping this arc up, I'm working on the next arc. So that will take us at least through 17.
Oh, nice.
So,
yes.
and that would be like in the fall. So, well, that'll be 13, I think is October. So yeah, something like that. And I hope it's going to continue. I hope I know that this arc is a little confusing for people with the changing artists. I think, what happened was I designed this arc similar to the way it is now, but I designed it for Leo. And then we lost Leo, and I lost Ben, and we lost time. And so suddenly replacing him was not only an incredibly impossible task to begin with, but it became more difficult because the story I had written for him, I didn't think just anybody could pick it up and handle it, because it had all these changing worlds and stuff. I was like, how? It's not going to land. The visuals are not going to be. And then the more time we spent trying to figure out if we should do a different arc or figure out on this, the less likely we were to get the better artists. We were losing that window every day to be able to get them on. And so the sort of last minute Hail Mary, when I was like, I have to resolve this story, and I do think this is the best way to do it, I think it'll be hell on everyone. Hopefully I didn't think the readers, but maybe that too. But I think we should use these different artists for these 5 pieces of the story. And that way we're getting a different visual cue every time they go through these portals. We'll stagger the portals a little bit. Like, for example, in the next issue, they go through the portal. They don't go through any portals. They come out, and then they're in that the whole time. And then they come out in the next. So, like, the Sophie Campbell issue, which is in a cartoony style after they've gone through the portal, also has some of this Javier Pina dinosaurs in it. So, I don't know. I wonder if when people read it in trade, it's all going to, make sense. Or maybe just when they get to issue 5 or part 5 of this story, it'll all click together. But I see some people being frustrated about the changes in the art, and the story is definitely less precise. It's a little wilder. I've got a little less fine-tuning control by using a lot of different artists. So yes, it's gonna be a little rougher in places, but I do think that what you get for that trade-off, it's really interesting and fun. A chance to see these characters drawn by a bunch of really interesting artists in different styles with different costumes in weird realities, and playing with their dynamics as they're going through all of that, and seeing how they react to that stuff as a family. I just think that's really fun superhero comics. But I get that some people want something a little more straightforward. I guess I would say we're in this till 13, guys, so just relax into it. I mean, I will say that I think things get less rough after Robbie's issue, just because we were able to stabilize it a little bit. And also, Javi's been on the book before, so I think that'll be a stabilizing look for people. They'll expect it. And then, I mean, God, I wish I could send you the first sketches Sophie sent of these cartoon versions of these characters, because my God, I lost my mind. And to be honest, if people don't like that, fuck them. I don't know what's wrong with you. If you're not gonna have fun with this Who's Roger Rabbit cartoon version issue of Birds of Prey, I don't know, you sold your soul or what, man, but it's going to be so fun. It's going to be so fun. Just relax into it, guys. Yeah. Just relax.
I can't wait to see Barda hitting people over the head and they're seeing stars and stuff.
Yes. Birds flying around their heads. Yes. I can see it. Yeah.
I don't know if it's going to be a bunny in the final version, because I told Sophie, I was like, listen, if you don't want it to be a bunny, it can be whatever, can be whatever. It just has to be this cartoon thing. There's a cartoon bunny in the script that's messing with Barda, and it's the best thing I've ever written. Turn in all my Eisners for Barda being irritated with this animated rabbit. It's so fun. I don't know. I do feel bad. I do feel bad related to Birds of Prey specifically, because I do think that I don't mean to be letting anyone down. I'm trying to write the greatest, most fun version of these characters and really explore them and dig into them a little bit. But I can feel that more than on anything else I've ever worked on. I can feel that even as some people really love what I'm doing and sort of get it, a lot of people are just disappointed because it doesn't feel enough like the thing they wanted. And I always,
Oh.
yeah, I always feel like my job is, there's a really great, David Simon, who wrote The Wire. There's a really great quote from him about your job as a writer is not to give people what they want. It's to give people what they don't know they want yet.
Yes.
And something like that. I've probably butchered it. I apologize, David Simon, you genius. And I try really hard to do that. I feel like I failed some Birds of Prey people, though, because I feel like I usually do a pretty good job of where people come at me and they're like, well, I wasn't really interested in this, but I do like it, or I changed my mind, or you won me over. I get a lot of those emails and messages and social media things. And I feel like on Birds of Prey, while there are a lot of fans of the book, obviously, who love it, I do feel like some people just feel let down because they wanted something so specific that I didn't deliver. And I'm sorry to them, because it's hard when something you love feels like it's not for you anymore or just isn't the thing you were hoping for. But I also don't know how to do anything about that. I can't be in people's heads. I'm just trying to write a fun story. And if you can let go of what you wanted so badly, you might have a good time. But also, if it's just not for you, that's okay.
Right.
You know, I'm sure I'll be fired eventually, and maybe you'll get someone else. It could happen.
I try to remind myself too, whenever there's a roster change on a team book, especially, I remind myself, well, it's not going to be this roster forever.
Yeah, exactly.
Eventually, the characters are going to change. There's going to be new members coming back.
Yeah.
And like with Birds of Prey, I'm sure there's a lot of fans that know. I mean, eventually we're going to see Huntress again someday. Eventually we're going to see this character again someday.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot more merits in bringing the characters, like especially like Zealot and Big Barda, the characters that you would expect to see and that don't get a lot of screen time.
Yeah.
And that are rich characters. They're unique. They're multi-layered. They like another character that I would love to see guest appear in Birds of Prey or somewhere someday is the second Dr. Light.
I love Dr. Light, the woman.
Yeah. I think
she's
she would
great.
be great for like a guest appearance or something. She's
great.
a great character. She's another one that doesn't get a lot of screen time, a lot of appreciation, and yeah, definitely.
I love Dr. Light. I'd love to bring her in. It's funny you said Dr. Light, because I was just looking at something with her the other day, and I was like, maybe there's a future story there. It would be pretty far out, but yeah, maybe. I was going to say, it was something about the Dr. Light thing. Fuck, I lost it. Sorry.
That is funny because right before you came on, that was Justin. He's like, "Oh, I'd love to see her write Dr. Light."
Yeah. I love that character. I would love to see her in something new.
Yeah, she's great. Which is really, I feel like she's very popular. If you say Dr. Light, I feel like a lot of people think of her first, which is really hard to transcend the OG character. What I was going to say is I did get to bring in, just for a small bit, Xanthi Zhao from the Spirit World series is going to appear in Birds of Prey, issue 12 and 13. So,
nice.
But it's a very small bit in 12. But there's so many cool characters over there. I get asked a lot, like, why this Birds of Prey cast, and it was like, listen, I didn't know how long I was going to get to write. They tell you can write Birds of Prey, you don't know how long you get to do it. I just reached for all my favorite shit. Like, I was like grabbing, and
I love it.
I mean, I feel like that's the formula for most team books. It's like, well, who do you want? It's like, well, I love this character. I love this character. I love this
Yeah.
You pick your favorites. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I do think if you're trying to be smart, there's also a science to it. Like, you don't want.
Yeah, you don't want everyone to have like the same power set. Yeah.
Same power set or same personality or same. We all agree. That's a death sentence. Like, you need like oil and water to make it and keep it interesting. To the same way we were talking about Scarlett, like all the plot threads and all the ideas we're going to get from Baroness having been a good guy for a while and be inside on the Joes. Like, while she's doing that, is she being honest while she's there? Is she a double agent? Is she going to get out and relay all that information? It's great. It's all the stuff it creates.
You need someone who can pick a lock with their feet.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I I have to speak this into existence before we go. I just who do I have to call to get a Kelly Thompson She-Hulk book? Like,
ooh. Oh, I love that, Russell. Yeah,
so a lot of you'd have to make a lot of calls now. Well, I'm just not really doing anything for Marvel except for Jeff related stuff. It's been really great to see Rainbow doing that book.
I've loved that book so much.
It's so fun. But I got to be honest, She-Hulk is one of my favorite Marvel characters. I love writing her, and I did not get enough in that tiny little. Like, we had her a couple times. She showed up in Captain Marvel, but honestly, it wasn't very fun to write her in Captain Marvel because she was in that monosyllabic
savage.
Which
right.
I'm not trying to swing on that as a story point. It's fine. I just don't enjoy writing Jen that way. Jen is fun to write as Jen, not as a monster.
Right.
So, of course, that I got to write Jen, and honestly, it was so fun. It was so fun. She's a great character.
Yeah, I would love to see you write even if it's like a mini series or something. Maybe
some writing. And all of the art on that A-Force was pretty good, but when we had Ben Caldwell on there, man, that was really fun especially with Jen, because we had her like Hulk out and lose control, and like, when you tell Ben Caldwell to do that, he just goes nuts, man. It's great.
Yeah. and like She-Hulk is like a perfect character for you because you always write your female characters, and of course the artist always contributes. You make them like obviously strong, powerful, but they're sexy, but not in a like male gaze way. Like they're it's important. We don't need to go back to the 90s with women.
Yeah,
in
but
comics.
but let's be clear. That's almost entirely about artists. I mean, I think the only thing I'm doing there is being smart enough to hire or work with the right people, and to understand that, when I draw Barda stripping in Birds of Prey because she doesn't care about clothes, A, and B, briefly thought maybe they had mind control in them because she wasn't paying attention. I wouldn't just draw that. I wouldn't just write that for everyone, but I know Javi and I know David, and I know that they're not male gazy. I know that Barda's going to look hilarious. She's going to look sexy. She's going to look incredibly powerful, like she can crush your skull. And that's what that moment is about. I knew we weren't going to get like weird angles, like, oh, let's look at her while she does this. Let's look at her from very below, or something crazy like, so it just, I never would have tried to write that with a different, with the wrong artist, so you just learn, and I didn't even have to tell them anything. Like, I probably put something in there, you just to keep everyone calm, you write a little thing. You're like, you know what I want. Not offensive. Keep it fun. Keep it cheesecakey. Also, I added all this beefcake. So let's have equal opportunity cheesecake and beefcake, which helps keep the scales nicely balanced. Like, here we go. And I just know that they're going to deliver on that,
Very nice.
All right. Any final questions before we let Kelly get back to her Marvel snap?
I better not.
No more disrupting.
I have so much work to do.
So, yeah, that's right. Yeah. So Kelly. So you're doing Scarlett now. Birds of Prey still going. You also have creator and stuff. Tell the people about creator and stuff.
So the Cull and Black Cloak, those volumes are both out now. Eyes are nominated. Go pick them up. They're amazing. And then Black Cloak, I can't tell anybody when Cull comes back. We're working on it, I hope. Black Cloak begins again with issue 7 in August. I'm very excited about it. It's pretty freaking cool. Meredith's art is incredible. I've got Powerpuff Girls coming up. The first issue, that's in July. And I think that's all I can talk about right now. There's more Jeff coming in the fall to Marvel Unlimited, and there's another little Jeff thing that I guess I thought would be announced by now, but it didn't. So, but that's about it. I do have a very big thing coming later. I think it'll be announced in July, but we're not there yet.
I don't know how you modern comic creators do it. She's like, oh, I can only mention the 5 things I'm working on right now, not the other 3 I got coming up in a couple months here.
So I'm pretty tired.
Is it more challenging to like write those like Infinity comics? Yeah, like I feel like you'd have to go by it a totally different way than writing a traditional comic.
It is a very different muscle. I tend to think of it more like cartoons. No dialogue. What do I need to convey? The action. So the trick to the Jeff strips is really the idea, coming with the idea, and it can't just be, and I'm sorry to say, I'm not going to throw anyone under the bus by name, but a lot of those shorts that I was reading, they're just cute. They don't have they're not actually a story. Like, it's like, oh, hey, we're doing a cute thing. Well, okay, but then what? Like, there has to be a story, even if the story is just a joke. I mean, cartoons are a little bit more like a joke than a story in that you've got setup, and execution, and that's sort of all you have time for. And so Jeff, we lean very hard into that. Sometimes the setups get a little more complicated, A, because we've been doing a lot of them, and B, because he lives in a complicated superhero-y madness world. But Guri can draw, God, just anything. They're so incredible. And so it's easy to put your trust in them. I have to tell you, it would be very worrying to draw a wordless comic with a lot of people, even people I trust, but they're so incredibly good. Like, they just get it. And they love Jeff. I don't know if anybody loves Jeff more than me, but they're pretty close. I mean, a whole linchpin of his success is that they just became fans of him organically and started drawing him into things as little Easter eggs in the backgrounds of things. Like, oh, there's a Jeff coffee cup. This guy, Hulk, has a Jeff magnet. Oh, Jeff Spider-Man is folding his Jeff boxer shorts, in his laundry basket. And he's just showing up everywhere. And that was them. Nobody told them to do that. They just liked the character and they just started putting him in places. They went super viral for an exhibition poster they did. I think it was for like a Tokyo exhibition show or something that had all these female characters. Gwenpool, Ms. Marvel, Squirrel Girl, probably Wasp was on there. And then one of them had Jeff on a leash with like a little jacket. And people were like, what is this shark dog thing? And, so it was like a huge part of Jeff getting to be a series and getting 2 Eisner nominations is just their support of and fandom of Jeff, and like that they kept drawing him cuter and cuter into everything. And here we are, world domination Jeff time.
Why do I feel like that bunny that's going to show up in Birds of Prey is going to be the next Jeff?
I did say to Sophie that maybe an off-model Jeff should sneak into the pages. We'll see.
Oh, I love it.
I don't know if she'll actually do it, but it would be a missed opportunity to not find a way. I mean, God, should we make that bar a Jeff, like a little shark bar?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Stay tuned for upcoming issues of Birds of Prey, kids, with John the land shark.
I was going to say Hefe the land whale.
Yeah. Maybe we should do it. I'll ask Sophie what she thinks. We'll play with it.
I love it.
Jeff
fun.
Jeff conquers the multiverse. There you go. All right. But yes, Kelly, thank you once again for your time. I mean, you share I know you have little of it and you always keep coming back, so thank you so much.
I appreciate you guys having me. I always have a good time.
And thank you for the great books. Scarlett, Birds of Prey. Yeah.
Looking forward to number 2.
That's right, kids. Go pick up all her work. Kelly Thompson, grinding her heel into the boot of the comic book industry.
That seems bad.
In a good way. All right. Thank you so much.